Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and we are joined by the one and only Stephen Kendal. First of all, thank you for joining us, Stephen.
Josh, it is an absolute pleasure, and I hope you guys are having a great time in Venice.
Yeah, that's right. So we're finally talking to each other during the daytime for both of us. He's in Manchester, I'm in Venice, and I wanted to go into some very real issues that are affecting a lot of people in Britain and then worldwide as well. So we're going to start with a few of these headlines here. As Al Jazeera says, Britain halfway to recession as economy contracts pre-Brexit. GDP shows negative growth for first time in nearly 7 years. This Economist headline says, Britain's economy contracts for first time since 2012. This is Money.co said this. Interest rate cut not on the card, says analysts, as pound falls to 2-year lows after shock data shows UK economy shrinking. And finally, this Bloomberg article says, investors bet Bank of England will cut rates below zero by early 2021. Now, this is something that I think all of us have been talking about for a long time, Stephen. You got the ghost crash imagery behind you, which you've been talking about for some time. And it's this notion that we're already in a crash, we're already in a collapse scenario. And while all these people say, you've been saying this forever, they're missing the point that, we're seeing the economy papered over with debt and just propped up, and it's all fake and manipulated. And it's going to cause vast problems down the line the longer it's pushed off. And I wanted to go to you, Stephen. We're seeing all these examples of people saying, Britain's going into a recession, going into one. Are they already in one? And how much does something like Brexit really have to do with any of this?
Well, obviously my take on this, Josh, as you well know, has not changed for the last 4 years. And I've been saying really since 2008, the global economy has been in a recession. We've never recovered from the financial crisis of 2008. Now, obviously, since 2008, people have been wired to believe that the stock markets are going up, the property prices are going up, asset prices are going up, and therefore the economy must be strong. Well, for the past 11 years since the crash of 2008, all that's happened is there has been a huge amount of debt, an unprecedented amount of debt that has been pumped into the economy to give the illusion that the economy is strong. So really, I've been saying now for 4 to 5 years that really, if you take out the debt, the stimulus that the governments have been pumping it, the central bank stimulus, and effectively take out the compounded effect of the drop of interest rates, the negative territory, we have really been in a deep recession, and it's getting worse. So really, people have to fully understand that it's the debt that is actually keeping the system alive. Debt, derivatives, stimulus, and people are saying, "Oh, well, we're heading into a recession." Well, sadly, I strongly believe that we've been in a recession for 11 years, and what we're actually witnessing now is proof that this effective ghost crash that we are in is real. So I'm not at all surprised, Josh, to see what we're seeing now. And what is interesting is that the mainstream or what is classed as mainstream economists or mainstream analysts are actually now using the word recession. So not at all surprised, Josh.
Yeah, it's a last case scenario when they're actually pushed to the point where they have to admit, hey, we're in a recession. And this is happening around the world on a global scale. But I wanted to note that the blame is always carried over to things that have very little to do with what has created this problem in the first place. So, for example, like I'm sure Brexit has an effect on the faith in the currency, I guess, to an extent. But I mean, to see all these mainstream medias blaming Brexit, whether it's a go or it's a no-go, one way or another, it's like they're always blaming Brexit for these problems, as if Brexit has devalued the currency 99% over the years. What do you think about this take that we're seeing from media, and what that might mean down the line for possibly repeating the same mistakes of history over and over again?
Yeah, well, again, going back to the mainstream media, I really discount what is actually being shown or being portrayed by the mainstream media. You know, the mainstream news channels. So I actually discount that, because as far as I'm concerned, what they're reporting is garbage. The best indicator that people, effectively without any manipulation or without any fraudulent lies, look on the street. You know, if you look at the riots that are happening around the world, you know, Paris, you know, Hong Kong, UK, you know, these riots where you've got an angry populace who are fed up of being ripped off and lied to and manipulated. People really are a better indicator. Real life. Go on the street, talk to people, look at how many homeless people there are. You know, I mean, we're seeing in the UK an unprecedented amount of homeless people, an unprecedented. And of course, crime is on the rise, homeless is on the rise, people are angry, that's on the rise. And that is the real indicator. Not, you know, experts, financial paid experts who are paid fees to paint a rosy picture. You know, people say, well, I've listened to a particular expert on the news channel, you know, and this expert is telling me that everything's rosy. Well, who's paying these experts? You know, people are suddenly starting to wake up that, well, the reality is, you know, what is happening on the street is real. So I discount what these analysts are saying and look at, you know, I mean, last week there was a headline in Denmark, there are negative interest rates for the first time, you know, minus 0.5% for a 10-year fix, or 0% for a 20-year fix, or I believe it's 0.5% for a 30-year fix. You know, these are real indicators as to where it's all going. You know, when you can get a mortgage, Josh, effectively for a negative 0.5%, where the bank pay you to take out a mortgage, this is real. This is what people really have to look at.
It's almost comical if it wasn't sad. But you mentioned something that's very important here. I mean, regarding the analysts, of course, these analysts are wrong until at the last moment they'll throw in something about, oh, we're in a recession, and everyone says, oh, wow, great job, Paul Krugman, you predicted it. But you know, with what you're talking about with homelessness, I find this everywhere. I've been to 10 countries this year so far, and one of the main things that I like to do when I go to these different places, regardless of the culture, is see what's happening on the ground to everyday people when I walk down the street. And I'll tell you, it's the same thing in LA and New York, in Vancouver, Canada, to Italy, all over Italy, and through Spain, and especially France and Germany. I can't even get over what I've seen in places like Frankfurt and in Paris. I mean, in Paris, you look up and it's beautiful. You look down and it's just people laying all over the sidewalks. I wonder, have you ever seen it at this point ever in where you are walking down the street, the amount of homelessness?
Never. You know, I mean, at my age, my generation, I've gone through the 70s when I was a child, the 80s when I was a late teen, the early 90s when I first started my career. I went through all the 90s, 2000, 2010, through all the crashes. I have never, ever seen the amount of homeless in and around Manchester to these sort of levels. And when you start looking, you know, at patches of land with tents on them, you know, this is real. You know, you find a particular patch of land in and around the city centre, you know, a grassed area, I can assure you there's tents on it. Well, this is unprecedented, this. People just cannot afford to live in the conventional bricks and mortar houses. And this is a sad reality. I mean, parts of Manchester, you're thinking that it's a third world country, you know, I mean, it's horrendous,
Well, Stephen,
absolutely horrendous.
you have, for example, in places like San Francisco, people are working 2 jobs and are still living out of their car if they can even afford a car. I was just in San Francisco, and one thing that I noticed was that I talked to a guy. He had a tiny apartment. It was nice. It was a nice area, but it was a tiny apartment. And I asked him, "How much are you paying a month for this?" He said, "Well, we have rent control, so it's not that bad." I said, "Okay, well, what is it?" $3,600 a month for this tiny apartment. And you know, this is another example of, like you mentioned, you see this homelessness everywhere, and all these numbers are so skewered by the government. For example, you know, employment rates. You always hear every country you go to, the government saying employment's great. Well, what about the labor force participation rate? I mean, we're seeing employment get wiped out while the price of living skyrockets.
Yeah. I mean, this gig economy, where effectively people are on 0-hour contracts, it's an absolute joke to consider someone that is on a 0-hour contract in full-time employment. I mean, that is just crazy. You know, in the 80s, in the 90s, they had the benefits, they had the pensions, they had, you know, job security. Now, you know, people are classed in full-time employment if they have a contract, regardless of whether they've got any work. And that is just ridiculous, you know. So these numbers that are coming out saying that effectively the workforce, you know, the unemployment rate has never been so low and the employment rate is the highest it's ever been. It's a joke. You know, these figures are a joke. And it's sad. It really is sad that people are believing the garbage that is being told. So it's just you know, the way it is.
It's manipulated like everything else these days, it seems.
Yeah.
And with that said, and you mentioned negative interest rates, it's so crazy to think we've gotten to a point where, again, the bank is paying you to get a mortgage, and we're seeing the return of so many things we saw in 2007, but so much worse. I mean, from collateralized debt obligations to collateralized loan obligation to auto-backed securities, we're seeing these bubbles, the everything bubble worldwide. And I did want to also mention a stat that just came out recently, which is that negative yielding debt globally has gone from $13 trillion to $15 trillion in only about 6 weeks. I mean, at what point do we start scratching our head and go, well, this is just ridiculous at this point. I think we should just throw our cards in the air and let this come down.
Yeah. With a global GDP of around 75 trillion, and of course, you know, we're up to 15 trillion of negative bonds, there's going to get to a point, a tipping point, where these negative interest rate bonds will never get paid back. And of course, what's going to effectively happen, there'll become a very clear tipping point where the GDP will stall, the negative interest rates will keep going up, and then suddenly it'll just flip over. And that's when really people are going to have to start looking long and hard at whether this reset is going to be real and whether this ghost crash is real. You know, I strongly believe that we're in a very, very severe economic financial crisis.
You've been predicting it for a very long time, Stephen, and you've been right for a very long time. And I think eventually we'll get the vindication, but I don't know if we want that vindication, unfortunately. Yeah. But nonetheless, it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, back in January 2016, when I was invited up down to London to go on to the Max Kaiser show, I actually was saying then, at that time, gold had just triggered a buy alert at 1,045, silver had triggered a buy alert at 1,358, Bitcoin had just triggered a buy alert at $450. Well, of course, from then, or at that interview, I did say to Max, you know, with the derivatives model, that blockchain technology was effectively going to reset the financial system. And all of a sudden, you know, gold then started to go up, silver started to go up. We've seen a 25 times growth on Bitcoin from 450 to over $11,000. this is real. And I think, and I've been saying this for a while, Bitcoin is the canary down the mine for the failed financial system. And what we're actually witnessing is Bitcoin, its growth is going phenomenal. So, I'm not at all surprised, Josh, that we're in 2019 and we're seeing what we're seeing. And really, if you think about what's happened over the last 3.5 years, could you imagine what it's going to be like in 2022, 2023?
Oh, I can't even imagine. And, we first saw you on the Max Kaiser show several years ago and had you on after that. It's been like 3.5 years since then. And so much of this has come true. And I wish I could still see Bitcoin at $400. But nonetheless, we have seen this shift. And this is where I want to really get into. It's really important that we talk about this, is that there are more solutions than there are problems. And we see all these issues, but those solutions come down to what individuals do to kind of keep up with that system and do what they can to protect themselves. Now, of course, gold and silver as wealth insurance is very important. Gold has skyrocketed in recent days. But I think one thing that is really a game changer versus what we're seeing today within the banking system, the monetary systems worldwide, is cryptocurrency, as you mentioned, Bitcoin, and this notion that, we have this rebellious competing currency system that is not controlled by one individual, no matter what those conspiracy theorists write in the comments of this video. I don't blame them for being skeptical. It's good to be skeptical. But I feel like this is really the game changer a lot of us have been waiting for. Obviously, diversifying is important. But what do you think about the potential for something like blockchain and especially Bitcoin 5 years down the line versus what we're seeing, the tremors within the monetary system today?
Well, as far as blockchain or distributed ledger technology, I've been saying now for 4 to 5 years that in the future, people will look back at 2016 as a banner year for blockchain and distributed ledger technology. And around 2035, people will look back and realize that blockchain is up there with the invention of electricity, the splitting of the atom, the breakthrough of DNA, medical DNA, and it's so important for people to understand that the internet has now, for the first time, a facility where it can be valued. We're not talking of two corporations, having a monopoly, or two corporations having the control of the data. We're talking of a distributed system where effectively in the future, people will look back and say, what was it like before blockchain technology? Or what was it like before a distributed, decentralized ledger? And I think what we're actually witnessing now, Bitcoin obviously is the dominant cryptocurrency by far. That is the one that people believe in, they trust. It's got the history behind it. And of course, we're seeing, all these altcoins fall by the wayside, or certainly drop in value. But it's all down to application. And in the future, if there is an application for a particular blockchain that is being used and is creating value and locking in value, well, of course, what you're going to see, most cryptocurrencies, I believe, will probably fall by the wayside. And there will be a good proportion, and there might even be some that aren't around at the moment, but certainly within the next 7 years, the ones that have the application and the ones that are being used and actually do have, people do believe in and there's faith in them, those are the ones that are going to really take off. So I'm not at all surprised what we're seeing at the moment. There's a lot of people rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. There's a lot of people switching from one cryptocurrency to another. But really, you have to look at the applications. So, what we're witnessing now is the start of something absolutely amazing. And it's taking back control, Josh. That's what it is. It's people taking back control and ownership of the internet.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I do have to note, I think you've alluded to it a few times in past interviews as well. the combination of the currency aspect as well as just the infrastructure. I think infrastructure and currency are just as equally important in this, because all the things you could build on the blockchain are truly incredible. We're not at the point yet where we're really seeing the full potential of it. I think we will in the near future. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are building on the blockchain for no reason as well. I think we need to be able to harness the reason behind the blockchain and create incredible new things on the blockchain. I know I'm going to see it happen. The bear market has really brought a lot of ambition to people to do their best to build the best things on the blockchain that are useful and functional and properly decentralized as well. And we're seeing that with currency as well. So many competing currencies. People have been talking about competing currencies for years. Well, now we have this opportunity to make it convenient that you don't have to shave off slices of gold and weigh it on a scale and try and send it across the world without any middleman or anything like that. You know, you could just send it like that. You could send $40,000 for a fee of 15 cents. And guess what? Most people in the crypto community find 15 cents to be too high of a fee. And I agree. And that's why we're going to bring it down. But anyway, so with that said, Stephen, I would like to get your bottom line on this, on what people can look forward to in the future, the concerns that are that we're dealing with, and the very real potential of freeing ourselves from this monetary system going down the line. What do you want people to know as we close this off?
Yeah, I always say to people, don't believe or don't listen to people like me or people like you, or any other people that come onto onto the media and try and put their message across. I always say to people, do your own research. You know, don't believe everything you hear, whether it's from the alternative media or the mainstream media. Make your own mind up. You know, look at the facts that are in front of you and challenge. Always challenge what you're being told. And once you learn that, and once people have that as their sort of mechanism to decide what is right and wrong, what you'll then start feeling is you'll then start looking at things completely different. And then once you start looking at things completely different, you'll then start realizing that not everything that we have been told to be the truth is the truth. And once you then start falling into that category, then of course, that's when you then start positioning yourself. And I think that in the future, the ones that are going to benefit from a reset of the financial system are the ones that have took the time to actually do their own research and understand more of what has happened over the last 40 to 45 years. I always say to people, if you spend the time and educate yourself, that is when you suddenly break through or break free from this brainwashing of the mainstream media. So I always say to people, go out and do your own research.
Yeah, there are people that want you to be dependent and stupid, and we should do the opposite of that. We should be as independent as possible and be as educated as possible. That's so important going forward. And finally, last question, how can people find more of your work, Stephen, and help you in the work that you do and support the work you do? And as well, we got Change Angel that you've been working with as well lately. Can you go into that for us?
Yeah, I'm on three mediums. I'm on Steemit, which obviously is the blogging site on the Steem blockchain. So you can find me on Steemit at Stephen Kendal. I'm on Twitter, where obviously I share a lot of retweets and stuff that's happening in the blockchain and distributed ledger technology arena and cryptocurrency. You can find me on at Stephen P. Kendal. And then, of course, I'm on LinkedIn. Where there's a lot of professional connections. You mentioned Change Angel. Again, I want to give a big shout out to the guys at Change Angel. And also, I'm really excited that in November, big shout out to the Malta AI and Blockchain Summit, who have kindly given me a slot or a booth in the Startup Village So I went out in May, and these guys, the Malta AI and Blockchain Summit, they are really, really pushing the boundaries for promoting startup enterprises and promoting projects, big blockchain projects. So I'm really excited about the Malta week, which is effectively from Monday the 4th, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. 5 days. The location's been moved to the Intercontinental Malta. And if you're into blockchain technology, if you're into distributed ledger technology or cryptocurrencies or AI, then get down there and come and see me at the Startup Village. So big shout out to Malta Blockchain and AI Summit.
Excellent. Well, and Malta's a cool place. I appreciate you joining us, Stephen. There's always so much to go into with you. We'll be doing more from Europe as much as we can. Obviously, it's difficult to talk to most of our contributors in the United States right now because as we do this interview, it is 3:27 a.m. where I'm from, so it's a little bit difficult to do this. So I really appreciate you joining us, and we will be back at you with much more across Europe. We are traveling around Italy right now. We'll be in Spain and France as well in the coming few weeks, and we're looking forward to getting on the ground and giving you guys all the stories you want and try and report on as much as we possibly can while we're out here. So we appreciate all of you joining us, and we'll try to do our best to bring you as much as we humanly can right now. So anyway, thanks again, Stephen, for joining us. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here, WAM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated as we are so heavily demonetized and shadow banned to a crazy extent. We have lost about 80% of our reach since the beginning of this year as they rip away subscribers, etc. It has gotten out of control and it's becoming more and more difficult to stay alive here on World Alternative Media, bringing you guys free content every day. You can also check our Bitcoin address in the description as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also check us out on all these other alternatives like Subscribestar, where we are doing subscriber only content for people at the $4.99 US a month tier and up. We really appreciate it. You could tip us on there and pledge anything, but from $4.99 and up, we are giving people subscriber only content that you won't find here on YouTube. And speaking of YouTube, there are so many alternatives for YouTube these days, including BitChute, which we are on at World Alternative Media, as well as, of course, the new flote.app, flote.app, where they are truly replacing all of these social medias, including Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Tumblr, Reddit, and of course, Twitch and Patreon, all in one place, and it is truly incredible what they are doing. We are moving over there in mass, as well as BitChute, BitTube, Steemit at Josh Sigurdson, all those other places, as well as PocketNet. We are on as well at World Alternative Media. There's so many options today, and we're trying to get into as many of them as possible because we need to back ourselves up. We are winning this information war, but we are getting to a point where they are cracking down more desperately than ever, and we got to do whatever we can to stay alive as it's getting more and more difficult all the time. We also have events coming up, including Anarchadelphia 2019, which will be in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in September. Check out thestateofanarchy.com and anarchadelphia.com. Linked below, use promo code WAM, W-A-M, and save 10% on your tickets to this amazing conference as Anarchy is going viral. Also, make sure to check out the Winnipeg Crypto Conference in October. Also, use promo code WAM, another great event with amazing speakers, and of course, Anarchapulco, the one and only, in February 2020, which you can also use promo code WAM for WAM and save 10%. There's so many things that you can do to help independent media, including just pressing like, sharing, clicking the notification button, doing whatever you can to help keep this free information alive that's alternative to the mainstream. Anyway, until next time, thanks for watching, everyone. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.